Hi everybody, welcome back to Haunted Hearsay. Sorry we didn't do a broadcast on Tuesday. I was at the dentist and I had two fillings and I was drooling and I had the anesthetic and it wasn't going to happen. So I thought we would, but just didn't. So today we have Regina back again. Hi Regina.
Hi, Regina.
And
Hi.
then we have Caroline. Both Regina and Caroline are up in Donegal, and I'm down in the capital, Dublin. And it's freezing cold. There's storms, blizzards. Are you guys freezing up there?
Up here.
Absolutely.
Just in case anyone's wondering, I can't actually see Regina and Ben. There's something wrong with my computer, but I can hear everyone. So,
and we can see you. So
I'll try not to move too much. But I didn't want to do Tuesday on my own, obviously, and I'm glad you're in better form today. How are you, Regina?
I'm keeping good. Yeah, I mean, it's hard being I feel like landlocked in Letterkenny. I usually spend a lot of time down at the sea and things, but now like a trip to Tesco's is like a big deal,
It's a social life now at the moment. You have a few stories for us, don't you?
I do, yeah. I have 3 stories.
Happy days.
I have, well, I'll start with the first one, most personal to me anyway. When it was like 2006, right? And I'd been living in Dublin for years and I didn't drive, but when I moved, I was driving then, so I started driving, I started coming back to Donegal and started appreciating how beautiful Donegal was. And then when I was up at the weekends, I'd be driving to different beaches and beauty spots and this and that. And often my wee adventures. So there's a house down and it's called Rye, but it's spelled R-A-Y. And I had a person of the same said name along with me and my brother, and we stopped at this house. Now it's in between Ramelton and Rathmullen, and I'd gone to it a good few times, but the 3 of us stopped this day. It was a very kind of a dark day, and we weren't doing a whole lot anyway, so we thought we'd go and poke around this old house. The reason this has come back to me now is because I've been passing there a while ago and I see that someone's totally renovating the house, so someone's actually moving into it. So it was really derelict and really dilapidated, but really cool, really old, had its own private beach and had outhousing. And I'd say it was all abandoned since about the 60s or 70s. So this day, I think it was 2006, 2007, something like that, we're having a really good poke around it, and hanging about anyway, and just wondering who used to live here and all those things. We were in the house and it just felt very unsafe because it was falling down and there was a big stove in the middle of the floor, like someone had been at the house wrecking it. So I had a good look around anyway, and just time to leave, so we left. So Ray, he went out first, I came second, my brother behind me, and the door slammed shut behind us.
Wow, was it windy?
It was windy, but the door had been open the whole time. I wouldn't say it was it wasn't, it felt like just get out. It didn't feel like, oh.
Yeah, you'd know, by the feeling of the door.
The door, I wouldn't say was open or shut. It was just kind of half, the whole time. It's not as if we opened the door, went in, and then went.
Nice, yeah.
Because it's so derelict and empty and rotten and everything. Now someone is building the house. I remember thinking at the time, oh, I'd love to do up this house. Somebody is now, because I've seen all the trees are cut. And
it'd be interesting to know if there've any sort of occurrences happen in the house as they're doing it.
Yeah, well,
or good luck to them when they move in, if there's any kind of leftover spirits.
Well, that one wasn't happy that we were poking about anyway. I just had that feeling. I have another story then. A lady was telling me recently about a house that she moved into in the 70s, and she kept hearing a baby cry. And she says, just this kept happening. And then she talked to a neighbour, and they said, well, the people in there before had child that had died in the house.
Oh, wow.
But that she didn't say any more about it. She didn't know much about it. She didn't know the circumstances, whether it died first, anything at
Oh,
all. But it's just something that she mentioned to me. Right now, my third story is, I don't know if it's local legend or if maybe you could throw more light on it, Caroline. Someone had told me about Garton. And you know, is it Garton, or do you know the Evictions in Derry Bay?
yes.
It says Garton Lake, actually. Apparently, when is it the something of tears,
The Bridge of Tears. It's a place where it was sort of where the meeting place where people were leaving. The Bridge of Tears, if people come to see them off, and they would head to either get the train or, you know, heading towards Letterkenny or whatever. And it was known as the Bridge of Tears because it was usually the, you know, there was the goodbye point. It was the place where people crossed and said goodbye to the people that were leaving behind.
Right. I am quite fond of going out to Garton Lake, and I had a gentleman warn me about it. He said that because of the evictions in Glenvie, the lake is a very dangerous lake. Because it's claimed 6 people's lives, right? And it has to claim another. It's full of shelves underneath, so there's 7 lives to be claimed from it. And in Derry Bay, is it Derry? Glenvie, the castle. Apparently, a lady who was being evicted had put a curse on the grounds that no child would ever live there. And that a couple had moved in with their child, an 18-month-old child, and the child had drowned, but there'd never be a child to be born, or never be a child that would live in Glenvie. Have you heard of that?
Caroline, you were working in Glenvie, weren't you?
I was, yeah. Now, Glenvie Castle, that's definitely a place that has a few ghosts, and you can feel it the minute you walk in. It's not as old as people would think. I mean, it's a few hundred years old. But I mean, the man that owned that originally, John George Adair, he was an evil old shite, so he was. And the evictions that Regina's talking about, referencing there, were at the time the biggest evictions that had ever taken place anywhere in one go, where they actually evicted over 280 people, all in the one day, from their own homes, on their own land, but land that he had claimed or been given to him as a gift by the British government or Queen or whatever. And only because he didn't like them. He came over here from Scotland and he didn't like the Irish. And so he evicted them all in one day. He evicted them and he burned down their houses so that they couldn't go back into them. They were either boarded up or burned so that they couldn't go back in. And it was a very sad, because it was in the wake of the famine. So, I mean, the people were starving already. And then he just thought, this is an opportune time to get rid of them. I want them off my land. And, you know, that was their own land. It was family land that people had for hundreds of years that they came in and claimed, and put them all off in one day. So it was a terrible thing. More than half would have emigrated to America, with even half of them dying on the way. But the rest, either the workhouses, etc. I know that an ancestor of mine was one of the last to be evicted, and he would have been like a great uncle type of thing. And his wife died during the famine, and it was him and his 2 sons. And in those days, in fact, in Ireland, right up until the 1940s and 50s, if the mother died, the children were usually removed from the house. If there wasn't another woman in the house, children were removed from the father. Hard to believe that something like that was ever done, but it is. In fact, they made films about it. But yeah, his 2 boys were taken off him. They were thrown out. That was the grounds of Glenvie. Well, the village they were in was actually over, which is now part of the Guinness estate in Dunlewy. And the 2 boys were taken off the father, and one was sent to the workhouse in Fulcara, and one was sent over to the White House in Kincastle. He went on and done all right for himself. I don't know what happened with the young fellow that went to the workhouse, and I don't know what happened to the father. But I know that my father, God rest his soul, told Patrick Gallagher this story from Goats Don't Shave. They're quite a popular band here. And he wrote a song about it, and it's called The Evictions at Derry, and it's very moving. And so if anybody has the opportunity, look up Goats Don't Shave and look up that song. It's really very moving, but it's about the evictions. Obviously, there's been, I mean, we never thought we'd see the likes of it in Ireland again, but it has happened. It happened when the banks sold mortgages to all the, what do you call those sort of like
The
funds?
vulture funds.
Ultra
Yeah,
funds, well,
exactly.
you don't need
Like,
to tell me about that. We were
I
evicted.
know. You were on the receiving end of that as
Yeah,
well.
we were
So we never
evicted
thought
by a
we'd see the
vulture
likes of
fund.
Ireland again, but it's
I'm
happened.
sorry, Benji. Didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I'm here. I have my nice apartment now. I'm
Yeah.
in the clear, but yeah, it was pretty traumatic at the time. It's disgusting, the behavior. My
Yeah.
landlord was from Donegal. I won't name names, but he lost his house because he didn't pay the mortgage. He had 40,000 euros left on the mortgage to pay, and
Oh,
he lost the entire house. Now the house is for sale now. That's what they do. They take the vulture funds, kick you out, and they sell it. Guess how much it's for sale for?
much.
Were you in my old house, Caroline?
I was in your old house, and I
Yeah,
know it. I know
tiny,
that
isn't it?
Dublin is ridiculous.
It's an awful little house in an awful
Yeah.
area. Well, I mean, the area is fine. People are nice, but it's not. It's probably the most disadvantaged area in Dublin City, and 325,000 euros.
No way. Oh my God Almighty! It's oh my God, that's awful.
It won't
It's
sell. It's a tiny terrace house.
yeah,
It's with paper thin walls.
very hard to heat.
Extremely hard to
The
eat. Extremely
layout. I mean,
expensive.
those houses were built for as workhouses for the poor.
Yeah.
You know, 100 odd years ago. They were never built actually to last.
No, and whoever buys it is a fool. And
Oh,
yeah,
I feel sorry for the guy that lost it.
I don't. He's not a great person either.
Does
So
he not know?
that's a different story. But like,
Right, okay, then, okay.
we won't go there. But yeah, just in evictions happening now, there's parallels, absolutely. And you were telling me just
Yes.
before we started recording, Caroline, about Mayo, so a house in
Oh,
Mayo.
yes, very quickly. I'm actually going to look into this more, but I came across this beautiful old abandoned, well, I thought it was abandoned, fabulous big house in the heart of Mayo. And it turns out this house belonged to a guy called George Moore, and it's known as Moore House. It's overgrown and it must have been burnt at some time. But this house was built in the 1700s, and during the penal laws here in Ireland, this guy went to France, but he made a fortune selling brandy and things like that in France. When the penal laws were relaxed here, he came back. And he came back and he bought so many 100 acres of land. And but the good thing is that all the people that lived in his land during the actual famine, nobody was put off their land for non-payment of rent, and nobody starved during the actual famine. He made sure that all his tenants got to keep their homes and stayed alive during the famine. There's not many places in Ireland that can lay claim to that.
No, he's a hero.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, yes. So we're going to cover that. You have a picture. I sent you a picture of the house if you can get a chance to get it up.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to cover more in that, but it looks like a fantastic place to go and investigate as well.
Yeah, well, we can go on a road trip. We'll add it
Yes,
to our giant list of places that we're going after this.
we're going to be flat out busy zigzagging the country, like.
Yeah.
So, and I was telling you, I got speaking to a retired guard there the other day regarding Donnybrook Station.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to speak to, I think it's his brother or something that's a professor or something in Dublin, and see what he can find out about. Because I said, you know, that station's buried, that station's built on a mass grave. And he says, is it? I says, I can't exactly ring up the Garda station and go, hey, is the Garda station haunted by any chance? So yeah, we'll have to wait and hear from somebody else on that one. But I loved the idea of that Moore House in Mayo, and I liked the backstory to it. And yeah.
It's nice to hear a good story of someone that, like, isn't it?
During one of the darkest times in Irish history, really, you know, and the fact that this guy came back and he looked after his own, you know. It's nobody, as I say, nobody was evicted from his lands, and nobody died during the famine on his lands. And that's, you know, here. I know that, I mean, the famine reached us as far as here in Donegal, and the people on the islands. It wasn't that I mean, as we all know, as Irish people, it wasn't that we ran out of food. There was plenty of food in the shops. There was food being exported from Ireland every day, and by the boatful. It was because they wanted the people out of the houses, they wanted the land, etc. But they wouldn't extend them any credit, and they put the rents up. But I know now here in the Fairhill in Dunlow, I actually used to live there, but that's where the train station that used to come into Dunlow used to come in, and the bodies that came off the islands like Rutland and Ishman and Innisfree and Arnmore were brought up in the trains, and they were left up in the Fairhill, and they were disposed of from there. Where, I don't know, but I'm assuming it was mass graves. But I know the person that stepped forward to speak on behalf of the people here was actually the Protestant reverend down in the Protestant church in Dunlow. And he was the one that kept petitioning people to send food for his parishioners. As far as he was concerned, they were all his parishioners, Catholic and Protestant, they were all his parishioners. And yeah, I'd say he was solely responsible for saving a lot of people's lives here.
Yeah, interesting.
You know, so we're lucky. I mean, because people had sea, they didn't rely just on the potato. They had the sea to fish, but I mean, it still wasn't enough when they couldn't go to the shops and buy food or anything because they weren't allowed. That the English put a stop to that. They couldn't go to the shops and buy food, and so yeah, they were living off what they could get. So we didn't get it as hard. We certainly did get it here, but not as hard as other parts of the country did. So it was nice to hear that about that Moore house in Mayo. That was actually a nice story to hear.
Absolutely.
Do you know that the American Indian, and I need to remember, I need to look up what tribe this is, a long time ago now. The American Indian tribe, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name, that in America were so outraged at what the English were doing to the Irish people here in Ireland, and that they were starving. This is Indians that were living on a reservation in North America. So you can imagine, you know, they weren't well off. They were starving themselves. They raised $1,000 and sent it to Ireland to help feed the Irish people.
Yeah, I heard the story.
That would be like raising $1 million now.
I believe last year, it's the Choctaw people.
That's it.
Yeah, and in 1847 they sent money to help. Sorry, I just Googled it here, but I did know about this because it actually came back up in the news recently, because Ireland actually at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic set up a fundraiser for them.
Oh, isn't
they
that
were
nice?
heavily affected by COVID-19 early on. On the 5th of May 2020 is what this article is from, and they raised $1.8 million to send back to that tribe, the exact tribe that helped out the Irish.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah,
isn't that nice?
Yeah, it's
I just think people that were starving themselves and being treated as second-class citizens in their own country still had the heart. And let's face it, the Irish that went to America didn't have the greatest reputation, but that still had the good heart to go, do you know what? They're our fellow human beings. We're going to do what we can to help them. And that kind of always sticks in my head. So it's the Choctaw, yeah.
Yeah.
And whereabouts in America were they based?
Let me just see. I'm not
it just kind of came into my head when we were talking about the evictions and the famine there. So it's a long time since I've read it.
Hopi Reservation. Southeastern United States. So it's like a group of Native American tribes. Navajo and Hopi.
It's impressive. It's impressive.
Oklahoma.
What they did for the Irish. Sorry?
Oklahoma would be a general area.
So we love the people from Oklahoma then.
So yeah, that's
tonight we were actually supposed to have a friend of mine come on to talk about the hauntings in his house, But unfortunately, we have extremely cold weather here, and he had things to do with his father, etc., that had to be brought forward because of the time. So he's going to be coming on to join us on Tuesday evening. And he has a few stories that literally put the hair standing on the back of your head. So we'll look, and we had another guy coming on Thursday as well.
Thursday, yeah, from America, Brian from Ghost Quest.
Yes.
That's finally tied down.
Yeah, I've been looking online. I've paid a lot more attention to the American sites, to the groups, the paranormal groups there, in light of the fact that a few have agreed to come on and talk to us, and paying attention to what they've done and listening to some of their chats on their podcasts. But there was one that caught my attention last week, and I kind of interacted with them a little bit, and they were talking about autism. And, and it wasn't so much the autism part that I was interested in, but it was the fact that we're trying to sort of connect, is there, are people more susceptible to paranormal because of being autistic, etc. But as I say, that's not the part I was going into. What it made me think of is I'm always harking back to asylums, and how we always know that they're extremely haunted. There's not an asylum anywhere in the world you'd go into that doesn't have, because of some of the things that happened that were acceptable, in the advance of medical science, etc. But I was thinking about it as well. How many times down the years have you had people who were openly psychic, but weren't aware that they were psychic, and were treated as though they had mental problems instead, and were put away?
I'm sure a lot.
And there's bound to have been a lot. I mean, I told you about that person that I worked with, and I can't go into too much detail before, and how, that's this person's parents, thought the same about this person, and was taking her to, counseling and everything. And it turned out she was just a very strong medium. And, spirits were trying to contact her, but her parents didn't believe any of this, and she didn't really know an awful lot about it. But it wasn't until she was sitting beside me, and I went over and I says, look, there's been someone tapping your back for ages and you're not answering. So they've come over and they've started tapping my back. And she couldn't believe it. She was really absolutely shocked. It was like, oh my God almighty. So you were aware of that? And she's, and that's how it came about, and I found out. And then, so I'm thinking about this, and Pat, how many times has that happened to people down the years, where they were actually just psychic or had some sort of psychic ability, but it was dismissed because no, we don't believe in that. It's dismissed and put into asylums, accused of sort of having mental problems. Because let's face it, I mean, you didn't have to have very much wrong with you to get put away. When you look back in the history of places, I mean, there was women, wayward women were put away in asylums if the answer, if their husbands couldn't handle them and things like that. They were well within their rights to have their wives put away.
And probably up until the beginning of the 20th century.
Do you know something? It happened a lot later than we would like to think it happened. Women that has been hysterical, or postnatal depression was another thing. It wasn't treated, and it was regarded as, some women that went a bit crazy after having babies, and they were locked up. They were locked up because they had postnatal depression. So a lot of things that we can recognize and understand now, but it made me think. I thought, how many times has that happened down the years where people were psychic? I suppose it's better than locking them up instead of burning them as a witch.
Yeah.
But I'm sure.
Well, I don't know. Well, yes, but it's a different type of torture, isn't it?
It is, but I mean, still, that's what I mean. That was people's reactions to things like that.
I wonder if anybody today that works like legitimately in, like, let's say psychiatric care, but has any stories about people who might not be of sound mind but are also psychic. Do you know that kind of way? There's like people.
It's very possible, but I mean, sure, all the asylums were all closed down.
Yeah, so I don't mean
they're not in private care,
like Victorian asylums. I mean people that genuinely, let's say Alzheimer's patients or like nursing home patients. I'd love to know if there's. I don't see why there wouldn't be. Like if you have a connection to maybe a dream-like state, or more.
Yeah, they're tuning into another part of their brain.
maybe.
Well, you
Yeah.
often hear with Alzheimer patients, I mean, they're normally talking to people who are dead. And as far as they're concerned, they're in the room with them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I kind of am getting at. In a
We
sense.
don't know that they're not seeing that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
know we're not seeing it and it doesn't make sense to us, but we don't know that they're not seeing it.
No, absolutely.
There's always that that they're probably tuning into another part of their brain.
Mhm.
But I didn't actually, people like, that's an actual illness. I sort of mean it like that. I meant people that
Yeah.
were psychic, that, would have visions or whatever, and weren't aware that that's what they were.
Mhm.
And how many times down the years have they been dismissed as crazy and just locked away?
A lot.
I'd say there's bound to have been a lot of it,
Yeah. I'm just I'm trying to remember if we spoke about this the last time or if we spoke about it off camera. But quickly, I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about the out of body experience that you had.
Oh no, we talked about it off camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had an out of body experience, and I had it during a surgery in London. And it was actually where my heart stopped for, I think it was about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And I was in, I was in the surgery, I was in the theatre. And what I remember is being in a warm place, a warm, comfortable place, and I felt surrounded by love. The next thing, I was above the theatre, above the bed that we're operating on. And I was looking down at myself, and I was looking down at the surgeons and the people working on me, but I could hear what they were saying. And the surgeon, because I was in the theatre, I think, for about 4 or 5 hours. And I could hear him saying, when I finish this, I'm definitely, I need to get out for a cigarette, and I'm heading for golf after this. And I remember whenever I came around, very quickly, I remember as I was coming round and the surgeon's standing there, oh, your surgery went very well, etc., blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at, and I says, and you're coming out of that stupor. And I said, oh, can I have a cigarette? He went, don't be so stupid, you're just out of surgery. And I says, but you've just had one. And he says, oh, well, you can smell that off me. I says, yeah, so you're heading off to golf now? And he went, what? I says, are you heading off? So I started telling him what he'd been saying during the surgery. So he got the anaesthetist in. He started to panic. And it was like, could you feel anything? Because everything I said to them, I was repeating what they had been saying. And he kind of panicked a bit because he thought maybe, that situation where you're in surgery and, your body's paralyzed, but you're aware of what's going on. That wasn't the case, but that's what he worried about for a sec. I says, no, I couldn't feel anything. I says, I literally was out of my body looking down at you. And he was really, really shocked. He was, because once he'd established that it wasn't anything that they had done and that I hadn't felt any, made sure that I hadn't felt anything, etc., there was no taking away from the fact that I was able to hear what they'd been talking about and that I said it back to him what they'd been talking about. And and who was standing around where, because I was looking at them from my height. So that was just one story very quickly. But astral projection is something we definitely have to touch on again, because that's something I absolutely believe in. I've traveled to many countries in my sleep and woke up and looked them up and been stunned when I realized the places that in my dreams that I had gone to see were real.
Mm-hmm. We've not even spoken about astral projection off camera.
No. And I forget. There's so many things that we need to cover that I forget sometimes. I was something, I haven't flown in my dreams for a while now. But it's something that used to happen quite a lot. But it is something you can develop yourself. There are techniques that you can use to develop certain things if it doesn't come to you naturally.
Yeah.
But we'll come back to that and we'll do a proper program on that whole thing, astral projection. But the out of body,
third friend that has a story like that. So I have two other friends, and one of them's your friend as well, that had the same sort of experience. So can't wait to do more on that.
That's a whole program on its own, and you'll find lots of people have had that experience. I'm certainly not unique in that, lots of people have had it. But listen, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in again. As I say, I can't see anyone, so I'm just hoping you aren't making faces at me. But and we'll be back actually Tuesday. We weren't going to do a Tuesday evening for a chat, but we will this Tuesday, and hopefully we'll have Brian McCafferty coming on to talk to us. Everything will be okay for Tuesday. And then Thursday we have our other Brian from the States, who's going to come on from GhostNet and chat to us about his experiences and what got them started. So looking forward to that. Look, sounds like it's going to be really good fun. Regina, thanks for joining us with your story again. You're always very good. And Ben, thank you. So
I'll see you very soon, everyone. See you next
don't
week.
forget to like and subscribe and share if you
All
can.
10 of you.
Okay. I think it's about 12 now, is there?
Oh, maybe.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.